Mark your calendars because today is the debut of a powerful new 1-mana artifact from the Lost Caverns of Ixalan, the Millennium Calendar. If you're able to achieve the tall task of getting 1,000 or more time counters, you sacrifice the calendar and your opponent loses a gajillion life.
It's actually 1,000 life. Get it right.
1,000 counters is no small task, so we've built our Tron style deck with Paradox Engine to power the way. The engine allows us to untap the calendar multiple times a turn to double the number of counters on the calendar with its activated ability. So raise your glass and let's toast, because today we're ringing in the new year a little early. Cheers. Your time is running out. Alright, this is match 1. Opening 7 looks good. We'll keep it. Opponent starts with a Blood Crypt tapped. Probably playing against Scam. They're on a 6-card hand. I think we'll start with our tower here and pass the turn. Opponent untaps Marsh Flats and a Thoughtseize. Probably take the One Ring, and they do, in fact, take the One Ring. Back our way, drawn to a second core tapper. We're going to play out our Saga, our Chalice for 0, our Cornucopia, also for 0, core tapper. We're going to sacrifice the core tapper to put counters on the Cornucopia, and then we're going to play out another core tapper. Opponent fetches, end of turn, Blood Crypt tapped. Shotgun a Blood Crypt, probably a Fable, and it is. All right, we untap, drawn to another Cornucopia, Saga up to 2, play out our Power Plant. We're going to put a counter on the Chalice, we'll play out our Serum Powder. I'm going to play out another Cornucopia. Now we're just going to pass the turn back. Fable goes up to 2, discard a Grief and a Not Dead After All. Marsh Flats, fetch, basic Swamp, 3 cards in hand, second Fable, sure. Trigger the Fable, a Ragavan, also okay. No attacks. End of turn, we'll make a fairly large construct. Untap, draw into another Chalice. We'll make another construct. And while I'm tempted to get the Millennium Calendar here, I think we're going to wait one more sequence to do that. We're going to get an Expedition map. Throughout today's video, you're going to see me make some unusual and maybe even some suboptimal plays intentionally. I'm going to go out of my way to get kills with the Millennium Calendar when I could have just killed the opponent in other manners, because having your opponent lose 1,000 life is a lot more fun than attacking with constructs. Cast out the One Ring, trigger, we'll draw a card. Another tower, we'll play that out, and we're going to move to combat and swing for 20. Blocks with Ragavan, blocks with the Goblin Shaman. The reason I attacked there was because I knew they had to block, so it was more about killing their creatures than trying to kill them. I'm just buying time here. Let's start by drawing 2 cards. Alright, we draw into a Karn, should do the trick here. We'll play out our Forest, charge counter on a Cornucopia, 4 mana into a Karn minus, and we're going to get a Paradox Engine. We're going to untap our Cornucopia, 5 mana, cast our Engine, 3 mana, cast Serum Powder, untap everything. Put a charge counter on a Chalice. We're going to draw 3 cards. Draw a Mystic Forge and another One Ring. Make it so one of our constructs can't be blocked this turn. I'll cast a Mystic Forge and tap everything. Core Tapper on top, bajillion mana, Core Tapper off the top, untap everything. Millennium Calendar. And the calendar is in play, but because of the way that it's worded, you can't get your first time counter on it until the following turn when you untap. This is easily the biggest drawback of the card, as it needs to be in play for at least a turn before you can win the game. I suppose if they have a Dothy Voidwalker, we could lose this, so we'll see. Playing with your food, not advised. Alright, it appears not. But it's attacking all at me. I suppose they could also have a Bone Crusher Giant, so maybe a little reckless on my part, but what are you going to do? We will block. We're going to put a charge counter and some more charge counters. Alright, we take 0. Reflections are going away. Opponent's paying costs. Lightning Bolt down the Karn. Sure. Okay, we're going to tap everything down, end of turn. Then we'll move to untap. Ring's going to trigger, calendar is going to trigger. Alright, we have 14 counters on the calendar. Let's see how many we finish the turn with. Okay, draw into a Saga. Let's start by drawing a gajillion cards. We're going to add a ton of mana. We're going to double the number of counters. We're going to untap the calendar, and we're going to double the number of counters again. We cast Chalice for 8. It's going to untap everything. We're going to add a ton of mana. We're going to double the number of counters. We're going to untap. We're going to double again. We're going to cast a Cornucopia. It's going to untap everything. We're going to double the number of counters. Untap. We're going to double again. We'll draw some cards. Cast an Expedition map. Untap everything. We'll double again. And trigger. And our opponent's at negative 987 life. We're up a game. Alright, we're going to bring in 3 ley lines. We're going to cut a Cornucopia and 2 core tappers. 7's a little slow, but I do think this is a keep. We'll play out our ley line. Your go, opponent. The scammer on the other side of the table was clearly upset from game 1 as they brought in every imaginable piece of hate for our deck. Turn 1 engineered explosives on 0, along with Chalice on 0, meant that any chance of ramping our mana with artifacts was out the window in the early turns of the game. We managed to establish Tron on turn 4, which helps power out a 1-ring, but with the Bowmaster on the other side of the table, it limits its effectiveness after protection wears off. A third piece of hate hits the board on their following turn, a Blood Moon, which shuts off our Tron lands and any chance we had of getting back in the game. Dalti Voidwalker, along with the Bowmaster and Orc Army token, proceed to finish us off, so we're on to a Game 3. So we're going to scoop it up. Game 3 we'll take the play. So this hand is turn 3 Tron, but if they can scam a Grief against us, we're pretty dead. But it does the thing I think we're going to keep. We'll try it. Opponent's on a mulligan to 6. Start with a Power Plant into a map. Opponent with a Blood Crypt, Shock, Thoughtseize. Only one card to take here. They're going down to 16. Alright, we draw into a Cornucopia. Can't use that just yet. I think our game plan for the time being is going to be this Saga. Play it out, pass the turn. Opponent with 6 cards in hand. Bloodstained Mire. And I think I'm going to keep this map around for now. We draw into a Leyline. We'll play out our tower, and we're going to pass the turn back. Now, if they have a Blood Moon, we'll crack the map and get a Beseiju, play out the Cornucopia, and we'll Beseiju down the Blood Moon. Opponent with a Bloodstained Mire, nothing else. All right, we're going to start cranking with this Saga. 2-2, untap. All right, we naturally draw into Tron. Saga up to 3, 2 constructs. Let's get our calendar going. We'll play out the Mind, and we're going to move to combat, and we'll crack for 4. Opponent's down to 11. My plans of killing with the Millennium Calendar were derailed when my opponent cast a Molten Collapse on their next turn, destroying both the calendar and a construct token. They stick a Shieldred a few turns later, while I'm able to establish Karn and protect it with an Ensnaring Bridge. I'm faced with a difficult decision and decide to forego another calendar kill and opt for Walking Ballista instead, because my clock is running low and there's no guarantee calendar will survive to my next turn. Not the way we wanted to win the match, but a win nonetheless. Let's move on. All right, round 2, this hand looks pretty good to me. We'll keep it. Opponent with an Urborg into a Spellbomb. Be my guest. Draw a second Surge Node. We are going to be ramping very quickly with this hand. We'll start with a Mine into a Surge Node. I will say it is likely they play Karn as well, so we do need to prevent that from coming down. So we need to get them dead quick. Opponent with a Demolition Field and a Sign in Blood. They draw 2 cards. Draw into a second Paradox Engine. Not really what we're looking for. Let's play out our tower. Chalice on 0. Surge Node to put a counter on the Chalice, and a Core Tapper. We'll put potentially 2 more counters on the Chalice if they try to kill this. Our opponent untaps, draws a card. I think they're going to be pressured to use this Demolition Field this turn. And there they go, they hit our tower. We're going to get our basic Forest. They have a basic Swamp, and they're going to Thoughtseize me. They'll hit our Karn most likely. Okay, Karn down. Need to draw some business now. Untap, and the Thoughtseize bug is real. Put a charge counter on the Chalice. We're going to sacrifice our Core Tapper to put 2 counters on the Chalice. Surge Node to put another counter on the Chalice. 5 mana for a Paradox Engine. 1 mana, another Surge Node. We're going to untap everything. Going to add 5 mana, Surge Node, counter on the Chalice. We'll cast a Karn the Great Creator. It's going to untap all of our non-land permanents. The card that makes the most sense here is probably the One Ring. So we're going to minus, use Karn's ability, get a copy of the One Ring. Add 6, put a counter on our Chalice, another counter on our Chalice, play out our One Ring, untap everything. One Ring triggers. We'll draw a card, another card, pretty good. So in this matchup, I don't know that we have the luxury of killing with the Millennium Calendar. All right, we're going to add 8 mana. Surge Node counter, Surge Node counter. Let's play out another Paradox Engine. Untap everything. We'll keep an engine. We'll draw 2 cards. Mystic Forge is excellent. We'll use a mana, counter on the Chalice. Add 11, counter on the Chalice. Mystic Forge. And this is infinite from here. We can assume as much. We'll exile the top card of our library. Karn on top. Put a counter on the Chalice. Counter on the Chalice. We'll add 14 mana. Draw 3 cards. Play out an Expedition map. Untap everything. Counter on the Chalice. We add 31 mana. Chalice for 15. Untap everything. 30 mana. Another Karn. Untap everything. Keep the new Karn. Minus the new Karn. Use its ability. And because of the matchup, we're just going to get our Ballista. We'll add 57 mana. And we'll Ballista for 28. Untap everything. Opponent's down to 12. And they're about to die. I would have liked to have passed the turn to use the Millennium Calendar. But unfortunately, if they cast a Karn, I just lose. So we can't afford to do that. Alright, we're up a game. My narration during Game 1 was foreshadowing as a turn 4 Karn from the opponent locks us out of Game 2. In Game 3, a Beseech the Mirror from the opponent finds their copy of the End, which exiles all of our copies of Karn. With the Millennium Calendar already in our graveyard as a result of an early game Thoughtseize, our only other win con are construct tokens. And with 8 copies of Field of Rune effects in the opponent's deck, we have no shot. We wind up losing the Battle of the Karns and are now 1-1. And we turn the page to a new match. We are jumping back in 1-1, and this hand is leaning really hard on this Surge node here. We're on the draw. I think I'm going to keep this and see how it plays out. Opponents on a mulligan to 6, they start with a Xander's Lounge. We draw into a land, which is good. Play out our power plant into a Surge node. We'll pass the turn. Flooded Strand, fetch, Temple Garden, shock, and a Beanstalk, they'll draw a card. We'll untap, draw into a One Ring, play out our Besage, cast our Chalice for 0, counter on it, map, and we'll pass the turn back. Basic plains from our opponent, could be another Beanstalk, Shardless Agent. Shardless into another Beanstalk, they draw a card, back our way. Draw a second Chalice. We're going to cast this Chalice for 1, Surge node, counter on the Chalice, activate the map, and we'll get our mine, we'll play out the mine, and we'll pass it back. 3 mana for another Shardless Agent, sure. Another Beanstalk, they are going to be drawing a lot of cards. Play out a Windswept Teeth, Kraken for 2, we're down to 18. Untap, we draw into another map. Surge node, counter on the Chalice. I think they're thinking about a binding here. We're going to play out this Paradox Engine. We're going to play out another map. It's going to untap everything. It's going to be a fetch. I think they're going to be getting a binding into play here. Hallowed Fountain Shock. There's a binding, they'll draw 3 cards. They're binding the engine. Still get the untap off of it though. Surge node, counter on the Chalice. Activate the Chalice, crack the map. Get a tower. Play out our tower. Cast a One Ring, trigger. Draw a card. Play out our Millennium Calendar. We'll pass the turn. 4 mana Omnath. It's going to trigger, they'll draw a card. Misty Rainforest, trigger. Basic Island. Teferi. Minus Teferi. Bounce one of the Beanstalks. Recast it, draw a card. No attacks. Move to discard. And they discard a land. Alright, let's go. Calendar up to 8. One Ring, trigger. Draw into a map. We need to find a Paradox Engine. That is the key. We're going to start with 4 mana for a Mystic Forge. Manifold Key is excellent. Pay 2 mana for a key. Surge node. And there's the engine. I think we got it. 5 mana for the engine. 2 mana. Surge node. Counter on the Chalice. We'll use the key. Untap a Chalice. Chalice. Surge node the Chalice. We'll draw 2 cards. Play out a power plant. We're going to double the counters. 2 mana. Expedition map. Let's untap everything. Surge node, counter on a Chalice. 4 mana. Surge node, counter on the other Chalice. 9 mana. Double the calendar. Key. Untap the calendar. Double the calendar again. Serum powder. Untap everything. Draw 3 cards. Ton of mana. Surge node, counter. Double the calendar. Untap the calendar. Calendar again. Mystic Forge. Untap everything. Counters. Surge node the Chalice. Double the counters. We're up to 512. Manifold Key, we'll untap it, and we'll tap it again. Deal our opponent 1,000. Minus 983, we're up a game. We're going to bring a copy of Stone Brain into the main deck, and we're going to shave a Core Tapper. Game 2, while this hand has business, I think it's a little slow. We're going to mulligan. And I like this 6 much better. We'll keep this. I think we're going to put Serum Powder back. Flooded Strand from our opponent. Fetch, they're on 6 cards. Land tapped. F6 value, our turn. All right, we have Natural Tron. I'll play out our mine and pass the turn. Misty Rainforest. Fetch, land tapped, back our way. We'll play out our power plant, play out our Chalice for 0, and our Core Tapper. Opponent's turn, they're up to 6 cards. Flooded Strand, fetch, basic plains, likely going to be a Shardless. Ardent Plea, sure. You can have a Beanstalk. Beanstalk in play. This is either going to be a Fury or a Solitude. Solitude, trigger the Beanstalk, hit the Core Tapper, we'll put counters on the Chalice. Back our way, draw into a Besage. 4 mana, we'll cast a One Ring, trigger, draw a card. Draw into a Mystic Forge. We're going to play out the Forge, another Forge on top. I think we're going to leave it there, and we'll just pass turn. Second Beanstalk for our opponent. They'll draw a card. There's a binding. They'll draw 2. See what they opt for here. One Ring or Forge. Take your pick. Take the One Ring. Windswept Teeth. Fetch. Could be another binding. Not another binding. Breeding Pool tapped. Untap. Draw into a Mystic Forge. Calendar on top. Start with 5. Paradox Engine. Opponent with a Force of Negation. Fire Ice exiled. Play out our calendar, play out our map, play out our key, play our mine, cast another Chalice for 1. Stone Brain is interesting. We'll add a mana, untap the Chalice, Chalice for 2, cast the Stone Brain, Core Tapper on top. We can't cast that, so I think we're going to be passing the turn. Opponent with 4 cards in hand, see what they got for us. 3 mana Shardless Agent, get themselves another Beanstalk. Beanstalk enters play, they'll draw a card. Calendar, we're going to untap. It's got 7 counters on it. Draw into our core tapper. Our opponent has 4 cards in hand. They can't have Leyline binding up. I think we're favored to win this turn if they can't interact with what we're doing. So we're going to start with the Stone Brain. We'll target them. Name Force of Vigor. 3 in the deck. Get rid of all of them. Opponent scoops. They didn't let us party. That's unfortunate. We're 2-1. The unfortunate part about playing this deck is that when your opponents see it coming, they don't always want to see things out until the end. This was true of our Living End opponent Game 1, Round 4, when we had established a Paradox Engine, Millennium Calendar, and the One Ring in play, and they quit before we had the opportunity to drain them for 1,000. And oftentimes when I play against Living End, I don't show the games because they're always the same. It's turn 3, they cast their Cascade spell, and then attack for lethal on the next turn. Unfortunately, in games 2 and 3, they were able to do just that, and we wind up losing. We're 2-2, going into round 5. Let's see if we can blow this thing up at least one more time. And this is match 5. Let's see if we can close this thing out. Grief Avatar, 100% of the time, means they're playing Scam. Opening 7, I think we can do better than this. I'm going to Serum Powder. And 6, the second hand, 2 Tron pieces, but it's kind of slow. I think we're going to mulligan. I think I like this 6 better. Keep this. We're going to get rid of Urza's Mine. I think I'm actually going to start on the Saga here. I'm going to play out the Chalice just in case they have discard. We'll pass turn. Misty Rainforest, back our way. Could also be Living End, once again. Saga up to 2. Surge Node was a good draw. Urza's Mine, 2 mana. Core Tapper. I'm going to sack the Core Tapper now. Cast out a Surge Node, and we're going to Surge Node the Chalice. And we'll pass turn. Fetch from our opponent end of turn. Steam Vents, Shock, Lorien Revealed. So it could be Rhinos. Get a Breeding Pool. Breeding Pool Shock, Renin 6, so not Rhinos. Bring back a land, back our way. Draw into an Expedition map. We're going to add a mana with the Saga. Let's get the Calendar. What the heck? That's not the right move, but we're going to do it anyway. Surge Node onto the Chalice. 4 mana, Mystic Forge. Land on top, unfortunate. We'll play out our Expedition map, and we'll pass the turn. Misty Rainforest fetch from our opponent. Watery Grave, unusual. Bring a land back. They have 3 mana up, could be a Cascade spell into a Beanstalk. They discard a land. Calendar, 3 time counters. Clock is ticking. Saga off the top. Surge Node, put a counter on the Chalice. 5 mana from the Chalice will cast the Core Tapper. Karn on top, not bad. Put him with a counter spell on the Core Tapper, sure. Play out our Saga, trigger. Play Karn, Serum Powder on top. I think we're going to minus Karn. We're going to get a Pithing Needle. We'll pass turn. Opponent pluses the Renin 6 land to hand, back into play. Bolt down our Karn, untap. Calendar up to 7. Saga up to 2. Serum Powder to hand. Surge Node the Chalice. Chalice crack the map. Get ourselves a Power Plant. Power Plant into play. Play out another Forge, Surge Node, and a Pithing Needle. Opponent fetches. Basic Island. We're going to name Beseju Who Endures. And we'll pass it back. Opponent cycles a Triome end of turn. Steam Vents tapped. Xander's Lounge back to hand. Flame of Venor hitting down our Calendar. That's just rude. Guess we'll have to get another one. Mystic Forge. We'll exile the Saga. And we'll exile the Mine. Okay, Expedition map means we'll have Tron. We'll draw into the map. Saga up to 3. We'll add a mana. With double Mystic Forge and a ton of mana at my disposal, I was able to play an abundance of spells off the top of my deck and establish Tron at the same time. I finished the turn with Paradox Engine on top of my deck, which should secure the win for me next turn. Back to our opponent. Opponent pluses their Renin 6. Land into play. Untap. Ring deals us 1. Draw the engine. Karn on top. We'll start with Karn. You know they have Snapcaster Mage in the deck. Karn resolves. Minus Karn. Opponent fetches in response. Basic Forest. Tishana's Tidebinder. Alright. That stops our Karn from doing its thing. They were waiting on that one. Let's activate our One Ring. We're going to draw a few cards. There's going to be another one of these things. It's kind of funny. Orcish Bowmaster is okay. We'll take one off the Bowmasters when it comes into play. Paradox Engine on top. They're actually choosing to kill Karn, which we can't even use, so that's fine. Chalice, Surge Node counter on a Cornucopia. Do it again on the other one. We'll add 8 mana. Paradox Engine off the top. There's another engine on top. Let a bunch of mana. Chalice for 4. It's going to untap everything. Surge Node, counter on the Cornucopia. Exile the card on top. Ton of mana. Core Tapper, untap everything. Surge Node, 27 mana. Cornucopia for 9. We'll untap everything. Mystic Forge, exile land. Got a lot of mana. Play out our Karn, untap. I'm going to minus Karn. And our opponent scoops. Moving to game 2. And we found ourselves in a very similar situation as the end of game 1, with Mystic Forge, Paradox Engine, and a lot of mana at our disposal. Karn shows up off the top, which we're able to cast as a result of having Mystic Forge. I -2 the Karn, and because of the amount of mana I had at my disposal, my opponent decides they'd had enough. Little did they know they were getting another turn, because you know I had to tutor for the Millennium Calendar to try to finish out with a bang. Our opponent didn't want to celebrate with us, but I tried. Thank you for tuning in. I will see you all again very soon, but until next time, you know the deal. Be well, my friend.